Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I'm a client success manager at ClickUp. Thanks for taking the time to attend our human resources beginner webinar. Today's webinar should take about 40 minutes or so, and I'll be covering everything from basic information about how ClickUp's organizational structure works, how you can set it up specifically for HR use cases, and then how to navigate task features, set deadlines, and communicate effectively with teammates and enable privacy settings as needed. I have a couple of my colleagues from the customer success team on the webinar today, and they will be available to moderate any questions that you may have while I'm going through the demo. If you do have questions, on your Zoom menu bar, you'll see a Q&A tab. Please submit your questions in the Q&A area, and our customer support reps will be happy to help with those. You're welcome to also chat with one another in the Zoom chat feature, but just note that that's more for internal discussion amongst yourselves. We won't be moderating that from a question perspective. And then at the end of the webinar today, I will leave some time to answer some questions live for you about the platform. Yeah, so I've already seen in our chat tab, we have some people from all over the world joining us today, from Ventura County to Brazil to Brisbane to Cairo in the Philippines. So thank you all for joining us. It's great to see so many people from across the globe joining in. And yeah, please feel free to keep sending in your location so we can give you a shout out. We've got Phoenix, Germany, North Carolina, Hungary. So wow, a lot of people are, especially our people tuning in from Asia. I'm sure it's pretty late for you out there, so thanks for staying awake with us. Yeah, and also note that this webinar will be recorded. So it will be automatically sent to you at the end, and we'll also be posting it on our website where you can view all of our previously recorded webinars. So that's about all for now, and we can actually get started now with the webinar. All right. So this webinar is going to be focused around beginner-friendly features. I'm going to approach it from a perspective as someone who is entirely new to ClickUp, or maybe entirely new to project management in general. The first thing that you need to know when you get into ClickUp is, how is it organizationally structured? How can you start to use that structure to build out your HR projects and tasks? ClickUp is organized in a hierarchy structure, and the whole point of that is to make sure that each and every team has a proper place to do their work and make it easy for you to find your tasks in a couple of clicks. So I'm going to briefly explain how the hierarchy works now. So when you create your ClickUp account, you'll start by creating a workspace or joining an existing workspace that perhaps one of your other teammates has already made. And you can think of your workspace as your company office building, or just the hub for all of the personal work you're going to do in ClickUp. It's the ultimate container for everything that you're working on. Underneath your workspace, in your left sidebar, you'll then be able to create different spaces. Spaces can be teams, they can be departments, anything that helps you break up your workspace at a really high level. So now we're going to actually create a space for our human resources department, because you can see in my business here that I'm managing in this workspace, I have a couple of spaces already for my development and my marketing teams. So let's start by creating a brand new space to manage our human resource work. When you're creating this space, you can customize the avatar a little bit to give it some personality. And you'll be asked if you want to set up privacy for this space. You'll most likely want to set up privacy for human resources because obviously it can include some sensitive information. So by making it private, I can choose exactly who in my team should be able to access this space. Next, we're going to create our statuses. Statuses are the steps that your tasks will move through, commonly known as workflows. So this is how you're going to indicate to yourself and others how your tasks are doing. Do they still need to be done? Are they in progress? Have they already been completed? It's a way to hold yourself accountable and be open with other teammates about what you're doing. So we can create our statuses here, just some basic ones. For any of these statuses, you can choose to customize colors. You can also browse through some of our ready-made templates and drop those templates in for your statuses. Next, we've arrived at ClickUps. ClickUps are customizable features that are set up at the space level, and they allow you to determine how simple or complex your work in a given space is going to be. So for example, some of my teams that are working in different spaces, like my development team, they might need more features to work within their space. Maybe they like to track time in their tasks or use dependencies. But in your case, in the human resources space, you might not actually need to turn on all of these different features. So just keep in mind that these can be turned on or off depending on what you need to do. We won't get too into the weeds regarding the default settings for views, but in a little bit, I'll be showing you how to see tasks in different ways, like if you prefer to work in a list format or in a board or a calendar view. And just keep in mind that this is where you can tell ClickUp which views you want to be created for yourself up front in the space. So I'll turn on the calendar option as well because I like to see my calendar, my tasks scheduled on a calendar as well, but it's totally up to you. All right, now that we've created our space, we'll see it appear in our left sidebar here. So we've talked about two levels of the ClickUp hierarchy so far, workspace and space. The third level of your hierarchy is folders. Folders can be projects, they can be clients, they can be buckets of work related to people working in the human resources space. Again, anything that helps you break up the focus of a space at a high level. So for example, let's create a folder for administrative tasks. Inside of your folders, you'll then create lists. So lists are the fourth level of the hierarchy, and you can think of these as the tabs that break up your folders into smaller pieces. So for example, in my administrative tasks, I might have tasks related to onboarding, payroll, anything like that, the different types of admin tasks that I need to be managing. So now we can see our new folders popped up under the human resources space, and we have these two lists, onboarding and payroll. Keep in mind that if you want to keep things really simple and you don't need that extra level of organization that you'll find in a folder, you can also create standalone lists that don't have a parent folder. So in this case, I just have a one-off list and I can add simple tasks into that list to get them done. So our last level of the hierarchy are tasks. Tasks will always live inside of lists, and this is arguably the most important level of the hierarchy because it's where you're going to be spending the majority of your time in ClickUp. So I'm going to add a new task into our onboarding list for a new employee that I'm adding into my company. And now that I've created the task, I'm going to click to open it up to showcase some of these features within a task. So in your tasks, you'll be able to indicate those statuses to show how your tasks are progressing. You'll also be able to add assignees. So you can delegate this task out to a member of your team to complete it. You'll also be able to indicate a priority level. So if you want to qualify the urgency level of a task, you can do that here. Underneath your task title, you'll also be able to add a description to explain what this task is all about. At the bottom left of your task, you'll be able to add subtasks and checklists for smaller action items that need to get done within a task. So for example, maybe in my subtask, I'll create one for read employee handbook. When you open up a subtask, you'll notice that it has a very similar body to its parent task. So for example, I can have a different status for my subtask, a different assignee. I can add a due date to my subtask, or even add a checklist inside of the subtask. So subtasks are really for more detailed action items that need to get done within a parent task that might take a little more time or conversation to complete. In contrast, your checklists are very much about simple action items that can be considered either done or not done. So let's create a checklist for, first day of training. And then for each line item in this checklist, I can just add a simple to-do that I can qualify as done or not done. So meet with manager, introduce to fellow coworkers, just simple things like that that I can assign to my new employee, and I can just tick them off as they're completed. You'll be able to add attachments inside of your tasks as well. So of course you can add training manuals here, confidential documentation you need to share with fellow employees. And we also have some cloud storage integrations. So if you're working with, for example, Google Drive or OneDrive, you can create and attach files from those external platforms directly inside of your tasks. On your right-hand side of the task, you'll have, first off, the activity feed. So anytime there is a change in the task, like a status update or a due date change, that will be noted and you'll be able to see when it occurred. I'll also be able to have a chat with my teammates in the comment thread on the right-hand side of the task as we're working on it. So I can @mention a teammate to trigger a notification. And sometimes you might find that you have a comment that you need to share that is particularly important, that you really want to make sure is not going to slip through the cracks in the midst of a really long comment thread. In that case, we have a really cool assigned comment feature that you can use. So if you hover over a comment and click assign, I can assign that to my teammate. And now she is always going to see that comment as a line item on the left side of the task. So no matter how long this comment thread gets, she can just click on that to jump right to the comment. She'll also be able to see it anywhere in ClickUp when she's viewing her assigned items, and it won't actually disappear until the comment is physically resolved. So it's a nice way to create a mini task inside of this bigger task. The last important feature that you should be aware of is the start and due date option. So up here I can set a start date to show when this task should be started, and I can set a due date for when it should end. And that also includes start and due times. Let's say that you're not entirely sure about how you should set up your folders and lists inside of your new human resources space. In that case, you can check out some of our ready-made folder templates, which makes it easy for you to see how we recommend setting up ClickUp for your use case. So hover over the name of your human resources space and click this plus sign to navigate to the templates menu. And then under ClickUp, you'll be able to browse through our human resources templates. So we have a couple of examples here that we can add into our workspace. The first is employee onboarding. And then I'll come back and I'll add in that second template for hiring candidates. So now we have this nice employee onboarding folder added into our human resources space. And inside of that folder, we have different lists for the different departments that we're going to be onboarding into ClickUp, or into our company rather. Our tasks in each list are the specific to-dos that each person being onboarded needs to complete. And you can see we have different statuses that have actually been set up for this folder. So the tasks here have a little bit different, have a bit of a different status set than we set up for our space. Keep in mind that's because you can actually override the statuses that you set up at the space level for your folders as well. So let's say you create a folder and you need them to move through slightly different statuses than you set up for the parent space. You can navigate to the folder statuses menu, and you can see here we have custom statuses set up for our folder that are different than the space level statuses we set up earlier. So right now we are in our list view, and list view is one of what we call our task view options. Task views are simply different ways of seeing your tasks. So we like to give you flexibility in how you like to work, not limit you to one specific way of viewing your tasks. The nice thing about working in the list view is that it makes it really easy for you to see the parent lists for all of the tasks you're looking at. And you also have these nice clean vertical columns to give you different information about the tasks. So for example, I can add in my assignees to delegate tasks here. I can set due dates for my tasks. And we also have what are called custom fields. Custom fields allow you to keep track of information about a task that might not be immediately apparent through the title of the task or through its status. For example, you can keep track of a task reviewer, which I have here. I have a people custom field set up in my employee onboarding folder to indicate who's responsible on my team for reviewing each task. You could also create different custom fields to keep track of other relevant information, like, for example, an employee contact email. There are a wide variety of other custom fields that you can set up as well, from phone to progress percentage to a website link. So anything that would allow you to keep track of extra information related to the task, you can add in as these various fields. And in my list view, I can customize the way that these columns are showing up. So I can drag them around to change their order. I can widen them or shrink them. I can even hide a column if it's not really relevant to me at the moment in my view. Furthermore, you can customize these task views, and we will talk about some of the other basic task views in a moment, like board and calendar. But while we're in our list view, I want to talk a little bit about how you can use sorting and filtering to zoom in on certain information. So right now we're viewing our entire employee onboarding folder here. This might be a little bit too much information to take in at once. Perhaps you want to highlight some key information in this view, like maybe the tasks that are assigned to you or tasks that are overdue. And that's when you can utilize our sorting, filtering, and grouping to make it easier for yourself to see that information. So in one click, I can click Me Mode and only see the tasks that are assigned to me. By default, we're seeing tasks that are assigned to everyone, but if I switch to Me Mode, now I'm only seeing the tasks that are assigned to me. If I want to, I can also apply different grouping in my list view. So as you can see right now, our tasks are being grouped according to their statuses. But if I want to change this up, I can group by different criteria. So for example, I can group by priority to see tasks that have urgent, high, or low priority, or group by due date to see what tasks are overdue, due today, and in the future. You can also apply filtering. So if you want to view tasks that only match a certain criteria, use a filter to do that. For example, let's say I only want to filter to see tasks that are in the plan status, or I only want to filter for tasks that have due dates in the past. I can layer different filtering options on top of one another to change what I'm seeing in the view. Keep in mind that anytime you make a change to the layout of your view, like a sort, a filter, or a group, you'll see the option to save the changes to your layout. When you do this, it's going to save it for anyone that comes to this view. So for example, now that I've saved these changes, anyone that comes to this view is going to see the tasks grouped by due date. You can also choose to auto-save changes to your view so that ClickUp will stop asking you every time you make a change if you want to save it. So just a few things to keep in mind when you start making different adjustments to the layout of your view to preserve those changes. Now, the one thing I didn't show you yet is how to sort your tasks in list view. So let's go over that really quickly. I'm going to make my priority column appear in my list view. And to illustrate how sorting works, I'm just going to drop a few priority flags onto my tasks here. So I'm indicating different priority levels for my tasks. And I'm grouping by due date. But I also now want to see the most urgent tasks at the top of my view, so I can keep track of those and do them first. So I'm going to click on the column header in list view for priority and choose sort. And now my urgent priority tasks are being shown at the top. So that's one easy way as an HR manager that you can keep track of tasks grouped by date and then sorted by priority. In our board view option, you're going to see tasks in a different way. So again, we're still seeing the same tasks from that employee onboarding folder, but now we're seeing them in vertical columns that are grouped by status. So this is a nice way to get some perspective on tasks that are in early phases versus tasks that are nearing completion. And you can also drag and drop tasks between columns to change their statuses. Just like in list view, I can also change up the grouping. So if I want to change my column headers and group by priority, for example, or by due date, I can do that as well and drag things around to make quick changes. So we know that inside of our task, this is where we'll add those start and due dates. But you'll also notice in your board view and your list view, anywhere where you see these dates, you can make changes to the start and end dates for the task. There's no need to actually click to open it up to make that change. You can also make other changes to your tasks like adding an assignee from the board view or changing its status, anything like that. Last view that I'd like to touch on is the calendar view. So in our calendar view, we're going to see all of our tasks that have start and or due dates. So for example, here I have all of my scheduled tasks and I can see unscheduled tasks on the right-hand side. So I can actually drag and drop these onto the calendar to get them on my agenda. Now, right now you'll notice that I can see the titles of my tasks, but not really any other information. So it's hard for me to gauge, who is this task assigned to, where does it live in ClickUp? And all you'll need to do to change that is to go up to your settings menu here for your calendar view, and you can choose what you want to show on each of your task cards. So now I can see lots of information about my tasks like their locations, assignees, and priority. You'll also note that you can sync tasks to an external calendar from here. So if you use Google Calendar or Outlook, you have the option to send scheduled tasks from ClickUp to that external calendar so you can work on them from that external calendar as well as in ClickUp if you choose. Now we've touched on some of the more beginner-friendly task view options. We're not going to get into too much information about these other options in the beginner session today, so I'd like to talk a little bit now about how our page views work. Page views enable you to keep track of high-level resources related to larger projects. So while task views are all about seeing tasks in different ways, page views are about having higher-level conversations or resources related to bigger projects you're working on. So as an example, in my employee onboarding folder here, I have a doc view, which is one of our page view options, called Training Docs. And this is a place where you can create SOPs, onboarding resources, Anything important to keeping your HR processes going documentation-wise can be created in the doc view. So these can include rich editing. So if you click the / key on your keyboard, you can add lots of cool rich editing to your doc, including headers. You can add tables. You can even embed a video or a GIF directly into your doc. Docs can have nested pages as well. So if you have a lengthy doc with lots of different sections, you can nest pages inside of one another. And these can also be shared publicly with people outside of ClickUp. So if you want to share just a PDF version of whatever doc you've created outside of ClickUp, you have that option. You can also create chat views. Chat views are great for having higher level conversations with your teammates. So we have our task comment thread to chat within a task, but for example, maybe I'd want to create a chat view for my employee onboarding folder to have a chat with my teammates generally about how onboarding is going. So I can @mention my teammates to trigger a notification for them. I can also do cool things like tag in a task or a doc view that I've created somewhere in ClickUp that I can send to my teammate in the comment. So for example, if I hit @ on my keyboard twice, I can link to an important task that my teammates are working on in this folder. And my teammate will then be able to, when he opens up this comment, actually jump right to that task and work on it. The last page view that I would recommend, well, actually, let's jump into our second template and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about some of those other page view options. So to explore the other folder template that we added into our human resources space, this is a folder that we've laid out to organize our employee hiring process. And we have different lists for the different departments that we are hiring for. Different statuses have been set up for this hiring candidates folder as well, so that I can keep track of when I'm going through these calls with each potential candidate for which I've created a task. I can just change those statuses to show where they are in the process. This folder template also incorporates some nice custom fields that you can explore, like contact information, level of experience, which is a colorful drop-down custom field, contact information link, quick check mark to see if they've sent their resume, and then a note field as well, so I can add a little note in there when I'm interviewing them. To show you what this looks like in the board view, again, this is a nice way to see all of the candidates you have in various phases. And then you can also get a high-level overview in the calendar view of your scheduled interviews by date. Now I've clicked into my client success list here, and we can see that we have a different type of view popped up at the top, which is our form view. Form views are great for streamlining your intake process and creating tasks in ClickUp from the information that you collect. So for example, you can actually create a new form view to monitor your application process for various roles. In our form view here, we can add a description that someone will see when they open up the form to fill it in. And then we've added various standard task fields like task name and description into the form that they'll be able to fill out. And then also some different custom fields that they'll fill out. When the submission comes in from the form, it's going to be added as a new task in ClickUp that we can take action on. So since my form here was created in the client success list, new form submissions are going to be sent as tasks into that list. So let's fill this form out as an example to show you what it would look like. So once you've made a form that you like, you can actually share a direct link with to that form to have someone fill it out, or you can embed it on an external website, for example. All right, so I'm applying for a new position in the customer success department. So I'm going to say, my name is Sophia, my cover letter, it's very elegant. And then I can attach a resume if I like. Let me make that field not mandatory. And that was another thing to note is you have the option in your forms to make fields mandatory or optional for people to fill in. So I filled out the form, I've got a notification that it was received. And now if we go back into ClickUp, I can see that new task from my new applicant has popped up, and I'm able to see their cover letter. If I attached a resume, it would be included in the attachments area, and then I can move forward from there and contact the person to get going with the interview process. And then lastly, I wanted to mention the Embed View option as a page view. So to skip out of the human resources space for just a moment, the Embed View allows you to embed literally anything directly into ClickUp, from a PowerPoint presentation that you want to share to onboard new employees, to a landing page mockup that you're working on, to a Google spreadsheet that you need to edit directly in ClickUp. Anything that will help you monitor that resource alongside your projects. It looks like Figma, which is the platform that we are embedding in this view, is a little bit slow today, so apologies for the delay on that, but in theory you should see a landing page embedded here. So maybe we'll come back to that later. Perfect, it loaded. So here you can see a landing page mockup that I'm working on. But again, you can embed literally anything alongside what you're working on in the human resources space. The last thing that I wanted to mention a little bit before we jump into some of your questions would be how to set up privacy and permissions. So we went over how to set up privacy when you're creating a space, but what if you want people to see some of the stuff you're working on in the human resources space, but not everything? You have the option in ClickUp to set up privacy and permissions for folders, lists, and tasks in ClickUp as well. So to do that, we'll just need to navigate to the sharing and permissions menu for example, a folder in the sidebar. And then here I can choose who should be able to see this folder. So I can make it private. I can invite a couple people who should be able to see it. And then for anyone that does have access to this folder, I can indicate what they should be able to do inside of the folder. Should they have view-only access, comment-only access, the ability to edit but not create anything, or full edit access? So again, this can be set up for lists and tasks as well. If you want to make a list private or set permissions, you can do that. And then inside of your task, you can make the task private by navigating to its sharing and permissions menu here. Lastly, actually, before I take your questions, I wanted to talk about how notifications work in ClickUp, because that's a critical part to ensuring effective communication between teammates. In ClickUp, you will receive notifications for any task that you are watching. So watchers inside of a task will be identified underneath the eye icon here. Watchers are people that need to receive updates about changes that occur in a task, like a status being changed, a due date change, a comment added. But unlike assignees, watchers are not necessarily responsible for completing the task. If you are assigned to a task, or if you are @mentioned in the task in the comment thread, you will automatically be made a watcher of the task. but you can also always add or remove people as watchers from this menu to ensure that they get notifications. So once you're a watcher on a task, you will receive notifications for it underneath the bell icon here. This is a really critical place to check each and every day. I recommend doing it first thing in the morning when you kick off your workday, when you get into ClickUp, and then at least 2 more times throughout the day, just to ensure you're not missing out on important information happening in relevant tasks to you. It only takes about a couple minutes to do so, and you'll be very grateful that you did when you realize that you're on top of all of your tasks. So there's a couple of ways that I can filter out my notifications here if I don't have a ton of time to go through all of them. I can click to see only task notifications for tasks that are assigned to me, or tasks that tasks and or chat views in which I am @mentioned. I can quickly clear a notification to get it out of my view. I can also reschedule a task to push it back and give me more time to work on it. I can stop watching a task to stop getting notifications about it. And of course, I can open up a task or a chat window to actually get to work on it. Lastly, I have the option to utilize the task tray feature. This is a great feature for preserving tasks that you know you need to get to soon, but you're just not ready to get on them at this moment. So by dropping a task into my tray, it's going to sit at the bottom of my window here to keep it top of mind for me throughout the day. So whenever I am ready to work on it, I can click to open it up, do whatever I need to do, and then when I'm done, I'll just click to remove it from my tray and it will be gone. If you prefer to work out of email notifications or like to get mobile pop-up notifications, keep in mind that you have the option to set up granular notifications via email, mobile app, or desktop app. Again, these apply for tasks that you are watching. So it's really up to you how many or how few notifications of these types that you want to receive. So for example, you might want to start with just enabling a few notification options that are directly relevant to you. For example, a task is assigned to me, or in the start and due dates area, you can set up little email reminders for, before your assigned tasks at a set time. So just a couple of areas to explore as you're getting into ClickUp. All right, so hopefully that gives you a high-level overview of how you can start organizing your HR workflows, but I'm going to now open up the floor a little bit and take a look at some of our open questions in the Q&A tab. So Maya, you ask, do tasks fall off once completed or closed, or are they archived if we need to reference later? That's a really good question. So in ClickUp, by default, when a task is closed, it will disappear from your view. So we can see that task is gone now. But I can make tasks appear at any time by filtering to see tasks that are closed. So status is select all so that I can see all of the different status types, including closed. And make sure that you're saving the changes to your layout as we discussed earlier if you want to make sure that those closed tasks always appear. In list view, you also have the quick option to show closed. Instead of going that filtering route that I just showed, you can just click to show closed to show any closed out tasks that you have in that list view. So Marie Eve, you ask, but you can see the tasks of ClickUp in Google Calendar. So if you utilize our Google Calendar integration, we'll jump into the calendar integration settings area to check that out. This is a two-way sync, which means that any ClickUp task that has a start and or due date can be added to your Google Calendar. Any changes you make to that calendar, or to that task rather, from Google Calendar will also be synced back into ClickUp. So yes, that means you would see those ClickUp tasks with dates that you sync to Google. Our Apple Calendar and Outlook integrations are a one-way sync, which means that tasks with dates in ClickUp can be sent to those external calendars. Changes made to those tasks outside in the external calendars will not sync back to ClickUp at this time. Cami, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You ask, can a guest user be assigned access to a folder, task, or list? Yeah, that's a good question. So we didn't cover guests yet, but I'm happy to do so. Guests, in contrast to normal members, are people that only need to have limited access to folders, lists, or tasks that you share with them. They will only see the folders, lists, or tasks that are shared with them, and they do not have access to spaces at all. So it's really for sharing, maybe with an employee that just needs to see a few tasks. That would be a good example of when to invite a guest. Guests will be invited via the same sharing and permissions menu that we covered a moment ago when going through privacy. So if I wanted to share this folder with a guest, I would just pop their email in there and indicate their permission level for that location. At the moment, assignees cannot be added at the folder and list level. So while you can share a folder or list with a guest to give them access to it, assignees are added only at the task level at this time. Moon, you ask, would view-only guests be able to engage on the chat view? So if someone has view-only access to a list or folder or a task, they will not be able to add text anywhere in that location, including in a chat view. You'd need to give them comment-only permissions in order to do that. Cami, you also ask, how are portfolios used here? So this is a bit more advanced, but I'm happy to briefly touch on portfolios here. Portfolios are part of our dashboard reporting feature. And this is where you can get a high-level overview of how your tasks are progressing, tasks and projects are progressing. So for example, you could create a dashboard specific to human resources. But in this case, I have an existing dashboard set up for sales in which we can view an example portfolio widget. So in my, first off, in dashboards, you can create various widgets to pull different reports on your data, like, for example, tasks by assignee in a pie chart or a time tracking report. In the portfolio widget, you can link specific lists and or folders to your portfolio to visualize their progress at a high level. So for example, I've linked different lists related to my sales team here, and I can see all together, what's the status, what are the statuses looking like for this list? What's the progress percentage? How many overdue versus completed tasks do I have? And you could do the same thing in an HR context by linking some of those lists and folders that you create into one portfolio to track their progress. Dominique, you ask, when you comment and mention someone, we see that in our ClickUp home. Is there a way to clear those already done mentions? So your home view is located in the upper left corner of your screen. And this is a centralized place for each person to come and see kind of what's most important for them to be aware of. So for example, tasks that are assigned to them that are on their agenda for the day. At the bottom here, we have our app mentions section. So anywhere that I've been recently app mentioned in, I can see those here. If you clear a notification from your notifications area related to the home area, let's see if that will actually clear it from home. So no, it will not clear that. It will still remain in the mentions area, but that's a good piece of feedback for the future. Melanie, you have a question, how are they doing timesheet? So I assume that you're asking how can you create a timesheet in ClickUp? So inside of your ClickUp tasks, you do have the option to track time. So each person can log time as they work on the task, either via the timer option here or just by entering a manual time log. And then for that time log, you can qualify if it is billable or not billable. So if you want to mark a task as being billable, you can indicate that here. You could also write a quick note to show what this was for. And even add a label. So if you want to classify what type of time log that was, you could create a label to add to that entry. And a widget that I would recommend that you check out in the dashboard area would be the time reporting. So with the time reporting widget, you'll be able to filter for time tracking that occurred in a given range of time. You can group tasks by user or by location if you choose. And then also choose if you want to show billable hours, non-billable, or both. And now I can see a breakdown of anyone that has tracked time in the past month. I can also see when that tracking occurred. And if there are notes for my time entries, those will also appear underneath my time logs. Aisa, you ask, can you add expiration dates to licenses/certification for employees or independent contractors? So I would recommend playing around with custom fields for that purpose. For example, you could add a due date custom field to indicate an expiration date for a task. So of course we have our official due date field for tasks to show how they'll appear on the calendar, but I can also add a date custom field to keep track of any secondary dates I need to be aware of for my tasks. And then in that field, I can add different dates onto my task. So I'll leave it open just a little bit in case there are remaining questions for a few more minutes. Dennis, you ask, I like the form option. Can completed form data be integrated into other formats like Google Spreadsheet? Can completed form data be integrated into other formats like Google Spreadsheets? So I believe you're asking if when a form submission comes in, if it can come in a different format than a task. There is not a way to do that at the moment. It will come in as a task. But again, a good suggestion for us when we make future form updates. Nick, yes, this is being recorded and it will be sent to you after the webinar is completed. Amy, you ask, I see that I can add ClickUp Calendar to my Outlook, but how do I move Outlook to ClickUp? Our native integration with Outlook is a one-way sync. So if you want to add Outlook calendar events to ClickUp, you would need to do that independently. We do have a Zapier integration with Outlook Calendar. So actually, if you search for, if you just do a quick Google search, Zapier Outlook ClickUp, you'll be able to actually see how to connect your ClickUp calendar to Outlook. Or excuse me, your Outlook calendar to ClickUp. So this will allow you to trigger when a new calendar event is added into Outlook. You can actually send that and create a new task in ClickUp. So if you just pop in a quick Google search to find that Zap, you'll be able to get that started to send Outlook calendar events to ClickUp. Brian, you ask, can you briefly touch on viewing workloads? For example, visually seeing which trainers are assigned to various training classes. So this is something I'll definitely cover more in our advanced training session, but happy to cover it briefly today. And again, for anyone that wants to take their HR project management and ClickUp to the next level, 1 week from today at the same time, I'll be hosting an advanced HR webinar, but an advanced task view that I'll cover during that session is the workload view. And this is a great way to view capacity by person. So I can see how much each person has on their plate and make a decision as to whether they can take on more work. So there's a couple of different ways that you can manage capacity in the workload view. You don't need to worry about the points option for human resources, but the simplest way would be to measure capacity by task. So I can set capacity for each person to say, how many tasks should they be able to take on a day? And we'll say 5. You can also apply for everyone that has assigned tasks in whatever location you're viewing. And then I'll be able to see on a daily basis, how many tasks does this person have on their plate? And I can assign them new tasks where they have room. You can also choose to manage workload based on time estimates. Again, this isn't something that we touched on today, but in addition to tracking time, you have the option to set an estimate for your tasks. So you can indicate how long it should take to complete the task. So in this case, I've set an 18-hour estimate for the whole task. And then I can set a number of hours for each user's capacity for how many hours of work they can take on. And I can see a breakdown by day of how many hours they have on their plate for that day. Moon, you ask, a little bit advanced, but is there any way to remove notifications for tasks that were auto-closed? So I assume you're using our automation options to automatically close a task based on a certain trigger. There is not a way to remove those notifications to remove tasks that were closed via automation. So that would be a feature request for a future notifications update. And you're welcome, Brian. I hope that was helpful for your workload question. So I'll stick around for just a few more minutes in case any last questions come up. Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend, especially those of you that are in crazy time zones right now that normally wouldn't be awake. Definitely great to have you all here. We have these webinars each and every week, so if you want to check out some of our other upcoming webinars, inside of ClickUp, you can click on this little question mark here, and you will be able to go to our webinars page. And here you can browse through our upcoming webinars and register for them. You'll also be able to check out some webinars that we've conducted in the past and watch their recordings. And under this area, you'll find a wide variety of other support resources, from onboarding docs to videos to our chat feature if you'd like to chat with a member of our support team as you're working through your questions. Thomas, you ask, is there plans to be able to @mention myself in a comment? There isn't a way to @mention yourself in a comment, but you can assign a comment to yourself. So if you want to make sure that you get a certain comment done, I do this quite a bit myself just to make sure that I don't forget to do something in a comment thread so that I can check it off whenever I'm ready. All right, so we'll begin to wrap up the webinar today, but again, you'll be receiving the recording from this session as soon as Zoom has processed it. And if you have any other questions as you're playing around with ClickUp, please reach out to us at help@clickup.com. We'll be happy to assist. And I hope you have a great rest of your day or your evening wherever you are. Take care.